So you're doing this live. We're doing okay. All
Yeah. Is that okay?
right. Totally, yeah.
Hey, how's it going, everybody? Portable Trevor here, and today I have a very special guest. Please welcome Tom Farley. What's up, Tom?
Trevor, what's going on,
Whoa,
man? This is
nothing
great.
much.
Good to see you.
You too. It's not like we've been talking for the past 30 minutes.
Don't I know I have nothing left to talk about.
Oh, yeah, this is it. All right. Thank you, everybody. Bye.
I thought I would have like a long, like musical intro, like my walk on, kind of song, but we'll
I
just
do
go
want to
right
treat
into it.
this. I want to treat this like a talk show eventually. Like I would definitely want to get like crowd noises
Yeah,
and
that'd be
a
cool.
cool theme song.
Yeah,
But that might be a couple years away.
I'll be
We'll
back.
see. You'll be back. You got to come back on. I
Oh
feel
yeah,
like this is going to be a
oh yeah.
good one. But Tom, why don't you kind of tell us? We'll definitely get into, you're obviously the brother of Chris Farley, and you've got so many stories to tell about him. But why don't you tell the audience, kind of what you do?
Sure, sure. I've done almost everything. I grew up in Wisconsin. Went away to college on the East Coast. Went to Georgetown, and just kind of stayed out there because I had literally no just life stream or whatever. I just kind of followed the crowd because I just enjoyed entertaining the crowd. So it
Mhm.
was mid '80s. Everyone went up to New York and went into finance. So I'm like, okay. I graduated as a marketing major, but so I said, yeah, I'll do that in finance. New York is a finance town, so I went up and worked for banks. I'm like, I hated math. I don't know what I was thinking. So I worked in New York for like 15 years, and mostly at big banks and Wall Street firms, doing a lot of mostly marketing stuff like that. So that was fun. But then 9/11 hit, and I had three kids. I was living in Connecticut, and I was like, here's a Wisconsin boy. And I loved the excitement of New York. But once I started having kids, it was just this like, this is what I'm doing the rest of my life. I'm taking a train down to New York, and I don't get home till after my kids are in bed. Um, or my favorite, you get the call from my wife, like, these kids are driving me nuts. When are you coming home? It's like, well, I got to get on a train, and that takes an hour to get home. So whatever's happening, you're going to have to deal with that.
Sitting on
Sorry.
a train for an hour?
Yeah, it was like an hour outside the city, but they did have a
Jeez.
bar car. So
Oh.
it's kind of like most people go to the bar after work and
Mhm.
meet and drink. I did the same thing with my friends, my neighbors, but the bar was moving closer to home every time, and then it dropped you off, and you could walk home. It was like, this is beautiful.
It's
New York,
beautiful.
New York's a little secret, yeah. But I just, again, 9/11 kind of shook us all. So I moved back to Wisconsin, and of course, obviously, it was right after Chris died, so I had just started kind of going into schools and talking about Chris's story, and I really thought I was making a difference. So I kind of started up the foundation kind of when I was still out in New York, and I realized that I really like doing this. But if I'm going to run a nonprofit, doing it from one of the more expensive places in the United States probably wasn't very smart. So I moved back here, and I wanted my kids also to kind of have a kind of Midwestern value, upbringing. So it was good. It was good. And my kids loved it. Um, uh, well, I don't think my wife did because she divorced me, but that's a different story. But anyway, so I've just been here doing, I get back into, my marketing stuff here and there, but I loved going into schools and talking about prevention and recovery and treatment. And then I wrote a book on Chris, and New York Times bestseller. We don't need to
Ooh,
talk about that, but
I definitely want to talk about that.
um, and so I go out and do a lot of public speaking. I'm a motivational speaker, which is funny because that was one of Chris's.
I was going to say, do you find that a little ironic?
A lot of ironic, absolutely. Um, so I just been kind of doing that, and now with COVID, it was really interesting. COVID forced me to do two things that I've avoided most of my life. which was exercise, because I was, isolated at home. I had to get out, so I just started walking, which is the extent of my exercise. I started walking, and then I also got a real job. So I work at United Way, and I love that it's community based. I love Wisconsin. I love my community. So United Way, the nonprofit thing, it's just all kind of. I wish I'd kind of found this out sooner, but yeah, so that's what I've been doing. Just doing a lot of speaking gigs, talking mostly in the area of recovery and treatment and substance abuse, and through Chris's story, now my own story of being in recovery, and doing some great kind of nonprofit work, in my own hometown community. That's fun, and I just COVID. I look at COVID like for the opportunities it presented, and I've had a good run of really, doing a lot of these kind of things. It's helped me kind of spread, the message to a lot of people. So I've been talking about that a lot, the dangers of, what we might face after COVID with, we're seeing all the increases in calls to helplines and things like that, and treatment and recovery type issues and mental health issues. Mm-hmm. So we got some work. I'm glad I'm at the, a part of that, helping people get help and find the services they need. So, wow, that's me. That's what I've been doing.
When did you realize that you could use Chris's story and your own story to like help other people?
Oh, well, it's really funny. It's a great story. I approached it because I was an out of work marketing guy, because 9/11 hit, and everyone, the financial services industry was getting hit hard. And so, here I was trying to figure out what to do. And I'm like, okay, well, I can go in, I can create this foundation and showcase what a marketing genius I am. That was my thing. I would really, I wanted to, deliver help people, but it was my, if I'm honest, it was really to do that, to show like what I could do with a brand, developing a brand. And I came to that realization when the first couple classrooms I would go into in Connecticut where I lived, I knew I wanted to, talk to kids. And so this woman who I had met, she had lost her son to a heroin overdose. And she goes, I talk to high schools. Why don't you come with me? I said, sure. And we would go in these high schools, the health class, and she would get all as a mother would do, obviously, very emotional, crying with a message of, don't make mistakes, and, don't do what my son did, and don't do this, and, stay off drugs. And I'm like, well, first of all, I'm Irish, and we bury, all of those emotions deep. So I knew I couldn't do that. Not only that, but I couldn't deliver it like a mother could. So I had to find somewhere else. And that's where my marketing kicked in. And so I went into a classroom, and I used to start seeing the same things every time. I would see the jocks in one corner coming in before class, kind of fooling around and pushing and shoving and joking around. The kids in black in the other corner, coloring on themselves. And just being their gothic great selves, and then the academics in the front row, just ready to write every note down, like there was going to be a test or something. And then the teacher would say, "This is Tom Farley, Chris Farley's brother, head of the Chris Farley Foundation." And I would see every kid just kind of stop and lean forward. I had 100% attention, and for a marketing guy, I'm like, okay, I got something here. I can build a brand around this. And so, I went with that challenge. I'm like, let's build a brand first. I didn't know anything about substance abuse other than my own personal experience with a brother dying of an overdose. So I said, well, I'm going to build a foundation. I have the makings of a brand, and certainly name recognition. So I'm going to build this brand first and worry about the programs later. which is completely opposite of a lot of nonprofits. If they have a great service or product or even companies, and they think that's what it's all about, and they worry about marketing and awareness later. So I did it. I flipped that around, and in building the brand and building the awareness over the next, let's say, 18 months, it gave me the time to kind of figure out, prevention and what is needed in terms of, creating a program. So I love the fact that I got this thing off the ground rapidly and had nationwide awareness because of the way I did that. So had a lot of fun. And the way I did it was I looked at my brothers, all three of my brothers, Chris, Kevin, and Johnny, who went through Second City Improv in Chicago, and they were actors, and they used their talented humor to really connect with their audiences. And I'm like, well, I got to use, obviously, if I'm running the Chris Farley Foundation, I got to use humor. So how do I use humor in this for this really serious subject matter and still connect to an audience? And I started studying improv like my brothers, and I took classes, and I realized that it was a communication device. It was created, way back in the 50s by this woman to attract inner city at-risk kids and help them collaborate and work in ensembles and work with each other and develop this kind of yes and attitude, this acceptance thing. And I'm like, well, that's what kids need. They don't need more knowledge about drugs and alcohol. They need a tool to use the knowledge that we have been giving them since the DARE programs in 5th grade. So I just I started going into schools teaching improv, with a prevention, drug prevention kind of overtone. And it was a lot of fun. It was great.
That's awesome. And how has that tool, helped kids, realize the awareness of like drugs and the effects that it can have?
Well, the biggest issue with drugs is peer pressure, and improv is about communicating better and creating what I called peer enhanced environments as opposed to peer pressured environments. And it was just, listening and accepting what people are offering to the group, and then being able to add your own piece to that. And it was just this, and above all, in an ensemble, when you're doing improv and when you're creating these units of collaboration, it's all based on trust. And once you start building trust amongst peer groups, where you can communicate freely and say, I really don't want to do this behavior or activity. It would work phenomenally. Mm-hmm. I'll give you another example. Is I started also working with in recovery treatment groups, and with young like teenagers. Now with this, I would in Wisconsin, this friend of mine would bring me into her groups, and it was usually this. It was kind of your typical AA type group where you'd have 10 teenagers, and they were all from different schools, different high schools, and different grades in the high school, but they all had like a substance problem. And so they would get there and they would go, okay, now share. And all these people, these kids are looking at the people around the circle and they're like, hey, I'm not sharing nothing. And so I would come in and I would do just improv games. I would just we're just going to learn to communicate better and build trust and acceptance. And we weren't talking about drugs or alcohol or prevention, all that kind of stuff at all, or treatment or recovery. We were just doing fun games and that were humor and bringing out the humor in people and really kind of breaking the ice with these kids. And we would do this for a half hour, 45 minutes. And then I would say, okay, to the substance abuse counselor, it's like all yours. Now they're going to share. Now they're going to do what you need them to do, and they're going to get something out of it. It was a simple little thing, and it unlocked, a lot of good, healthy dialogue.
Yeah, that's amazing. I never realized, improv had that power.
You just thought it would just be funny.
I did not. I did it in a little bit in high school, and now I'm taking an improv class here in Atlanta, and honestly, I'm doing it just to communicate with people better. And it is funny to be funny, but it's also fun to like learn how to communicate with different types of people.
Yeah, well, first, just developing listening skills. That's
Yeah, absolutely.
all of us need to do that.
What'd you
You
say?
know, all of us need to do that. Yeah.
I'm kidding.
Oh my
Uh,
God, that was funny.
I'm sorry.
Trevor.
Oh man. Um, so um, so with this foundation, I think it's beautiful that you're using your brother's story for good instead of, trying to promote yourself or something like that. I don't think you would do that, but just to kind of start talking about Chris a little bit. First of all, you wrote a book about him, The Chris Farley Show, which is a New York Times best-selling book.
Let's go there. Yeah.
So you wrote it in 2008, right? That's when it
Yep.
was published.
It came out. Yep.
So what kind of, it had been a couple years since Chris's passing, and in Scott Bowling's interview on Good Company, I remember he asked you like, when were you ready to tell this story?
Yeah.
And I found that really fascinating because, not everyone's ready to tell that story as soon as, a loved one passes away. So when was the
Yeah.
moment you were like, yeah, this can happen?
Well, it was interesting. Right after Chris died, the really neat thing about Chris, even when he was alive, was there was always, there was always friends or family that would get together and we'd tell Chris stories because they were amazing. You just could not believe the stuff he did. Like when, long before he was on camera, and certainly when he was a celebrity, the stuff he did off camera was always 10 times funnier. You'd always be with a bunch of people like, remember when Chris did this, or did you hear what he did last night? And you were the funniest guy in the room just telling Chris stories. And, so it's like, yeah, like people think, oh, Tommy is like the funniest, of all. It's like, all I'm doing is telling Chris stories. It's, so I went around, I thought that would be a great book. Let's just kind of like tell these stories that, nobody's ever heard of and nobody could believe. So I started shopping around when I was living in New York, and I went to a couple publishing houses, and all of them kind of came back and said, yeah, this is great. That's a great idea, but we want the whole story. We want tell us what happened here. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not ready to go there yet. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't. And instead, I went and did what I just described, going out, talking to schools and talking about Chris's story. And the more I got comfortable with that, and in a context of helping others avoid those same kind of problems that Chris had, then like 5 years later, maybe it was 10 years later after he died, I was definitely ready. And I had met Tanner Colby called me up, and he had just done a kind of a coffee table book on Belushi, interviewing a lot of Belushi's friends. And he said, between Second City and Saturday Night Live, and even, out in Hollywood, I've talked, I'm pretty sure I'm going to talk to the same people. These are the same people connected, to your brother. So let's do one on Chris. And I said, I'm ready. I can do that now. And what was neat about this particular person who had just done this book on Belushi is it was this, oral history kind of makeup where they went and interviewed, and the concept was to interview people in Chris's life throughout his life, growing up in Wisconsin, going to college at Marquette in Milwaukee, going to Chicago, going to New York, going to LA, going to our summer camp up in northern Wisconsin. And it was great because if I had just done the book and told my stories or told Chris's story through my eyes, it would have been totally different. And we'll get into that, why that is, because I had to share a bedroom with him, and it was, I'm still angry about with my parents about that. But anyway, so that was, and what was really cool is interviewing all these different people in all phases of Chris's life, gave this whole, picture of Chris. But I was amazed that all these people, some of them that never knew each other, but they all got Chris. They're like, yeah, they saw the same person. Um, and I love that because I've said many times because of the book, I've a better relationship with Chris now than I ever did when he was alive.
Wow.
Yeah, it's I accept a lot of the I accept a lot of the crap that he was giving me my entire life.
Do you remember the first story that you thought of? You were like, I got to put that in the book.
Well, just our camp stories. I mean, just growing up. Um, one of my favorites is my friend Timmy Henry in Chicago tells was we were my parents would send all the boys up to summer camp for it was an all boys summer camp, 7 weeks, just get out of the house. And she really needed that. So we went up there. And so it was this great summer camp. It was so much fun. My father had went there. All my brothers and I went there. My son ended up going there. So 3 generations of Farley's had been up at this camp, Red Arrow Camp. And
real quick, Tom. So there's a documentary called I Am Chris Farley. This is the same camp that was in the documentary, right?
Totally.
Okay.
Yep. So, no, but every Sunday, this camp would take the handful of Catholic boys, of which we were. They put us on a bus and send us into town to go to church. So we would go to church, and this being northern Wisconsin in the summertime, the church that we went to was outside. They did the mass outside amongst the pines. You smell the nature. It was very, very Wisconsin. It was really cool. But they have these little wooden benches that everyone sat on. But it was also the only time we got to see the girls' camp. They were across the lake, and so we were always goofing around. And one time, we're walking up to communion, and Chris is in front of me, and I don't know where he got them because like most camps, you're not allowed to have candy. So, but somehow he found Tic Tacs, and before he went up to communion, he took a handful of Tic Tacs and threw them in his mouth. And he's walking up, and it's 90 degrees out. And he's walking up to communion. And just as we get by the girls' camp, I see him just start wobbling, like he's like passing out. And then he just goes down and smacks his hand on the wooden benches, and his head goes back. So it looked like he just totally passed out and hit his head. But he spits out all these Tic Tacs and it looked like teeth. And all these girls are going, oh my God, that's disgusting. And all my friends are laughing, and I'm like, don't laugh at that. It's not funny. I'm like, stop laughing at him. But it was hysterical, and he was 12. Chris was 12. I mean, he just always knew how to do stuff like that. It amazed me because I was the oldest. I had to I had all these expectations. I told the line. I did all the right things. I studied. I dressed well. All that stuff. And I would turn around, and Chris was just doing nothing even close to that, and making friends. And it used to really annoy me. I'm like,
that's awesome. And how old were you at that time?
I'm 2 years older than Chris.
2 years older. Okay, 14.
Yeah.
So I have a younger brother. And I was kind of always the goofball growing up, so I completely relate to just looking over at my brother, and he's just shaking his head.
Oh yeah,
yeah. I love that story in the documentary. It was one of his rugby teammate players, and he said girls would walk by, and he'd drop down and go 199, 200.
I would see that. We would be in a bar on campus, at Wisconsin. We'd all come home from our colleges, and we'd go to this, local bar, the KK, the College Club. And it was so fun to see Chris, interacting with the sorority girls. And so I would see this, and Chris was so there'd be 4 sorority girls in a booth. And Chris would walk up and it's which way is the gym? The whole, it was the same thing every time. He wasn't that original, but he would play it so well. And so we'd walk up, and 3 of the girls would be laughing, there's always be one girl not digging, not liking this at all. You go away, you're disgusting. And Chris, instead of like, which is a natural human thing to like get defensive and start attacking, he would sit there and would not leave until that fourth girl, like, at least cracked a smile. And he would go down. He was so athletic. He would go down, would do these one-arm Rocky push-ups and pop back up and pull his shirt over his head and start walking around with this, like, like Oompa Loompa. And that was a patented move. That was great. And finally, the girls were like, that fourth girl who was so disgusted at first would just start like shaking her head, laughing. It's like, oh, almost pleading with him to go away. But she was laughing because he was just so relentless and just he was trying, to make an impression. And then she would smile, like, and Chris would go, okay, see ya. And he would just like, go to the next group. He was, amazing.
Was that learned, or did he like find that in a TV show? Because I remember in the documentary you guys talked about, your whole family was like obsessed with comedy, and you would memorize movies, and
yep.
Jackie Gleason was a big like inspiration for you guys. But Chris seemed to like put his own spin on it.
Totally. And you're right. We were just junkies for that stuff. Mm-hmm. And it was the comedies. It was the variety shows. And I didn't hone in on this until just now when you said this. And it like, oh my God, this is what we loved. Carol Burnett. We loved Jackie Gleason, and these variety shows, these skits. You're watching these people do skits, and that's what Chris developed, is this kind of sketch kind of mentality. He would walk into a situation with people standing there, and he was playing a role, doing a skit, and then, 2 feet over, he'd walk over and do something different. He was his own walking sketch comedy show. It was that's what it was. Because we watched all these, shows growing up that were huge back then. So yeah, that's Chris loved just being a new character with every conversation he walked into. Yeah, it was.
Was this like an everyday thing, or was there ever a day Chris just like didn't turn it on?
I would, for the most part, church. It was amazing. I mean, like Sundays, he get pretty serious at church. Although there were times, when he got bored, it just like church was very important to him. But at the same time, he also knew that he had this captive audience that were silent, and he could do things that, just were outrageous, but also nobody could reprimand him or like scold him, or, like my mom couldn't yell at him. We're in church. So he would do stuff like, again, I was always the target. We'd be sitting in church, he'd be sitting next to me, and he would fart and then start moving away from me and looking at me like, oh, Tommy. I'm like, oh my God, what did you do that for? And I'm like, there's nothing I could do. There was one time we were altar boys when we were in high school. And so this was, it was an Easter Mass. And, why would you put Chris and I up on the altar in front of everyone? This was not good. First of all, we had ADD. So we have no idea what's going on within seconds of the Mass starting. But we were altar boys, and there was an Easter Sunday Mass. There was like 5 priests up on the altar, including the bishop. And there was a point in the Catholic Mass back then where you had to ring a bell at a certain, important part. And I was the oldest, so I had to do that. And so the Mass is going on. And of course, as I said, we totally lost track of everything. I'm looking out into the audience. I guess that's what you call it. Looking for like friends from high school and stuff I could make faces at and stuff like that. And all of a sudden I hear next to me, Chris going, Tommy. I'm like, oh. And I like grab the bell and start ringing it. And I look, and every priest in the altar just stop and look at me like, what the fuck are you doing? Look on their face. And I realized at that shocking moment that I was 5 minutes before I was supposed to do this, totally at the wrong time. And just when I realized that, shock of the moment, all I hear next to me is, I'm like, you bastard. I'm like, oh my God, he totally set me up. It was horrible. Oh my God.
That is hilarious.
And then
What
there,
a
yeah,
oh god.
and then there were times like he was, I felt I had to make him my best man when I got married. So, I was like, on it, it was crazy. We were like sitting there in on the on deck circle in the sacristy waiting for the show to start. And I'm just kind of freaking out. And Chris just goes into this, this is before SNL. So he goes into this total Matt Foley, motivational thing. He's like, because he modeled Matt Foley on our high school football coach. So he was doing that back then. He was putting me through, jumping jacks and running in place and doing this whole like warm up routine. And we were laughing. I was in tears laughing. He calmed me down so much before I was about to go get married. And and all of a sudden the organ starts and he goes, all right, let's go. And he walks out onto just totally stops. And it was go time. It's like, now we're in church. And we walked out onto the altar. And I'm still trying to hold my laughter and he's like dead serious. And I'm like, oh, okay. So he not only did he get me totally unwound and calm, but he also got me right totally back in the game. It's like, oh shit, it's game time. He was crazy that way with his he didn't fool around with his religion. That's for sure.
What was serious Chris like? Because it feels like we didn't really get a lot of that whenever he was around. At least not in the public eye.
It was I think with all of us, it's sad, really. Serious Chris was sad, because he just would think deeply on things, and I know all that stuff was going on in his head all the time, like it does with mine, but he didn't have many outlets for it. There wasn't stuff, he was such a guy's guy, but he wasn't really good with relationships, but he always found like some real good girlfriend of his, only a handful of times in his life, I think, to have that outlet, and he would be serious, and they would come back to, we'd hear these stories later on of these conversations that Chris would have with a female friend of his, just kind of that stuff he wouldn't tell his buddies. And, I never had them, but yeah, they were, yeah, he could go there. We're not wired that way. I said this on a earlier, interview is, we had one bullet in the gun, and that was laughter, and that we used that for every emotion. It was, if we were, in a good mood, we'd overcompensate with laughter and, try to be, even more funny. If we were depressed, we would use laughter. If we were angry, a lot of times we would come out with real biting, hurtful, sarcastic humor. If we wanted to get back at somebody, we did it with humor instead of really dealing with our own emotions. So it really, our humor kind of kept that all at the surface, and we never really kind of, are you going to charge me? Do I have to pay you for this kind of therapy?
No, dude, not at all.
No. So
this is free.
Yeah, it's kind of weird, but I think a lot of people that use humor are like that. They don't, that stuff gets buried, and they don't get many opportunities to do that. But when Chris did, it was, he didn't hold back. So,
I also want to talk about, because this is something that I've dealt with, and whenever I was watching the documentary, I really resonated with, and it's that Chris really wasn't as confident as he seemed. Like, he had a lot of self-esteem issues, and it was just reassuring, because every clip I've ever seen of Chris, I was just like, man, I want this guy's energy. He's got to be the most fearless human alive. So can you tell me about that?
Sure. Well, Chris, obviously, he started, he had body images, he just never, he really, and we had a dad that was very large, but we loved him. We loved our dad, and dad loved to dress well. And he would come in with this blazer, that was like, huge. And hey, how do you like my new blazer and tie? And dad, you look great. It was always, dad, you look great. You look great. And like in the back of our minds, we're like, he doesn't look great. He's big, he's overweight. And I think Chris must have felt like, man, if that's how we're dealing with Chris, I mean, with dad, when people tell me that I'm funny or, great or, nice and wonderful, like, it's hard to believe others when I'm doing this with the person I love the most. We can't be honest. And so I think I think all of us kind of grew up with that in us, that lack of we aren't really confident because we know ourselves. We're not confident or love ourselves. We don't love ourselves. Farleys don't love ourselves. I don't know, but so how do we? I don't know. This is why I don't go to a therapist.
They ask you come on the Portable Trevor show.
Like, yeah. They ask me, well, I get, I'm not out money for this, so I can talk. So, so I think it's, a little of that. But one of the lessons I got from my brothers and from improv, and I talk about this all the time, and it's been very helpful for me, and it's going to be helpful for you, Trevor. So listen. No, I'm kidding. When I go out and talk and get on stage and talk to like audiences of 2, 3, 500 people, 1,000, that in and of itself, that is not normal. There's no person. There's no human. It's not human. People don't like to do that. People are always going to be uncomfortable doing that. The people that are really good at it are good at it because, like me, and I'm really good at it, I've just become what Chris taught me is to be comfortable being uncomfortable. And, because, when I go out and talk, as many times as I've done it and many times I will do it, I'll always be uncomfortable. I'm uncomfortable now talking about, like very personal things, but obviously I've gotten very comfortable doing that. And I look very comfortable doing that, but it's not a comfortable conversation, but I'm okay with it. I've learned to be comfortable with it, and it shows in my delivery and in Chris's delivery. And so I think that balance, it's just accepting and being outside your comfort zone. It's once you can do that, if you can do that even on a smaller scale, to be comfortable being uncomfortable, because life's uncomfortable. You're always going to come into some situation that's not comfortable. But if you come at it with fear, you're going to get real uncomfortable real fast. But if you accept that that it is uncomfortable and just move on, you're going to maybe do a little bit better. And over time, do a lot better.
That's really good advice. And I bet like something that helped Chris was, getting into improv and like getting into theater, like performing helped him. And
it was transformational for him. There's no question.
And so I also want to talk about his relationship with Second City and Del Close. What was that like for him? Del, he always kind of, Chris was like a little puppy dog, he wanted, we had that relationship with my dad, that unconditional kind of, anything you do is going to be good, or, do this, and he was always trying to please like somebody, like my dad or Del. I mean, he revered Del. He thought he was a genius because he worked with Belushi. That's it. Mm-hmm. And the Murrays and all that kind of stuff. So he thought that
if I listen to Del, um, the same thing's going to happen. So he was all in on that relationship, even though it might not have been. Del was a strange guy. So sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. You know, so I don't know. It was just Chris saw it as that was the golden ticket. If I'd listen to Del and do it that way, and so that's because he got into, he wasn't in improv long before he met Del and got involved in Second City. It happened unbelievably fast, and so he just embraced it, 100%. Because he thought that was the golden ticket.
Was that the biggest transformation that you saw in Chris? Did he change a lot whenever he joined Second City?
No. He was still on a raw talent. He was just still, he was learning his craft, but he was still Chris. He was still doing his Chris stuff. Mm. And he was so naturally talented. That was, so he was doing that, but to me, he was just being Chris. He was nothing had changed. But when he got to Saturday Night Live, and when I was living in New York first, and he came out, and there's a couple of years where he was still doing the, just riding off his natural talent and some of the stuff he learned at Second City, but it was still very raw Chris, and also very out of control Chris. And then he went to we went to rehab, and he got clean and sober. For the last 3 years on SNL, he was clean and sober, and that's when I saw this amazing, because I saw him like all of a sudden be a master of his craft, of his business. He really understood the business and what he had to do, and this, and my lens being a business guy in business and working in New York and working at banks, that's the lens I saw everything through. So when Chris transformed there, he was probably making he was doing amazing stuff, in his career wise, but also when he got to Saturday Night Live, he was also working with amazing writers. So they were really, he had great writing, and he knew how to execute that great writing. So that combination, that was a great transformation too. But it was also dependent on these great writers. But that combination was like fire, and we saw the result. But when he started and then when he went to LA and really started making movies, and I saw him really kind of making these decisions about his career and about a movie, and even what lines are good, all the stuff that he learned at Saturday Night Live, that's not funny, this has got to be over here. I'm like, wow, this guy learned an awful lot in a short amount of time. I was impressed. That's
amazing. Wow.
Yeah.
What was that phone call like, or if you were with him whenever he told you he got the gig at SNL?
Oh man, I was in New York, he was in Chicago, and he flew out. He said, yeah, they want me to come to SNL. And so they put him up in a hotel, and I remember meeting him there, and he goes, yeah, I got to spend all Saturday, at the show. And, I think even Friday night met some people. And I think little did he know that at that point it was pretty much a done deal, but he thought he was, and, Lauren just wanted to meet people and kind of spend the day up there. And it's funny, you hear other people are, you see on Facebook and stuff, their audition tape at SNL. Chris never had to do that. It was just kind of meet the people and see if it's a good fit. So we spent all the day up there, and then I got a call, later that night, around 6-7 o'clock, and it's Tommy, they said I can go to the show, and they said I can bring someone. You want to go to the show? And all of a sudden, I realized, oh my God, we're going to Saturday Night Live, because we grew up on the stuff. And so he goes, Tommy, get down here, get down here. So I got down to 30 Rock, and we're like two kids, like going crazy, like this is not happening. No more was it, I could be on this show. It was like Chris and I were like, oh my God, it's like we were going to see the Packers. Like we're going to a Packer game. Like, I can't believe we're going to Lambeau. We were in there, and we were just elbowing each other. It was like, holy shit, look at that. Look who that is. And it was amazing. Yeah. And we were like, we were watching the bands. It was Clapton was playing that night, and it was just so cool. Like, and like if it ended all right there, Chris and I would have been like, that was cool. Like, okay, what's next in life? Whatever. And then it was like, a couple months later, and like, yeah, he got the gig. He's coming out, and yeah. But that first time, that first weekend was like, he thought it was just, I don't know what he thought it was, but we were just excited we got to go to the show. And then, the next couple of years, I actually got tired of it. Chris would call me up.
SNL again.
Yeah. Like, you come to the show tonight? I'm like, I don't know who's playing. He's like, I'm playing, Dick. I'm like, oh yeah, sorry. It's like, never mind, forget it. So, yeah, that was fun. It was a good time.
That's funny. What's your favorite sketch from SNL that Chris was in?
Oh, wow. I love the Schmidt-Skate commercial. That was one of my favorites. Yeah, I thought that was fantastic. Oh man, there's just so many that it's kind of like what they would brought out these Chris things, it wasn't the big ones. It was always kind of the little ones that were, hey, I love Chippendales was so good because, I mean, when we were in college, we went back up to our summer camp, and we were counselors for the summer. So we were in charge of these, 10, 11, 12-year-old kids, which is insane to think about. So, but we would go out into town every night, the counselors, and we'd like whip, whip it up. And there would always be some like little, Northern Wisconsin band playing. And this is like, 5-6 years before SNL, but this was so Chris. I'm like, the band would go on break, and all right, we'll see you in 15 minutes. And everyone would like clear the dance floor, go back to the bar and start talking to people, and they'd have some piped in music. And all of a sudden, every time people at the bar were like, oh my God, look. And like, I don't want to look. And Chris alone on the dance floor by himself, shirt off, slapping it on the ground, going down, doing these push-ups and doing the whole Chippendales thing. He would do that nightly. And people were like, oh my gosh.
Maybe that's why that sketch was so amazing, because he just did it every night.
Well, all that stuff, it's all those things that like of Chris not acting. The other one was, people are like, I've seen that. People are like, oh, Chippendales is so good. It's like, I've seen that so many times. It's ridiculous. The other one was, the Chris Farley show. Growing up, I had, as I said, I had to share.
Remember when you were in the Beatles?
Yeah, well, I had to share a bedroom with Chris growing up. I'm still bitter about that. I let my parents know all the time. But I used to call him. I don't know. I think he was afraid of the dark. I don't know what it was, but I used to call him Mr. Question, because every night he wouldn't let me go to bed until he asked all these like just stupid questions. Like, remember that scary movie we just watched? It's like, yeah, dude, we just turned off the TV. It's like, that was pretty scary. Like, what would you rather like be caught in a room with, like Frankenstein or the Wolfman? I'm like, Frankenstein, because he would engage me to why I would answer the stupid question he was asking. I'd go Frankenstein because I could outrun him. He's slow. It's like, no, it's a really small room, so he definitely would catch you. I'm like, okay, then the Wolfman, because he'd bite me and it'd be over. It came. No, he turned you into a Wolfman. I'm like, would you just shut up? and let me go to bed. And it was just nightly and all this time. And then 20 years later, he's doing the same thing with McCartney. I'm like, what is going on here? It's just like he's getting paid for this. It's crazy. It was like, wow. But that again, that's just Chris because he just was what you saw was Chris.
That's incredible. And something else I wanted to ask you was, I think there have been so many people that have tried to replicate what Chris did. Like anyone can, scream like Chris did. Anyone could fall over like he did, but it's not funny the way Chris did it. Why do you think, what was like, the magic formula for Chris, like being funny in those moments?
It's funny. This was kind of sad when I think back on it. But when we were up north one summer, we were at our cabin one night, and we're coming back from the bars, and we're in the kitchen making some huge sandwich before we went to bed. And Chris was like, I think I'm going to be really funny. I think I'm going to do this. I'm like, just being the total, older brother dick. I'm like, okay. Well, what do you got? And he goes, well, I do this one character, that's kind of a fisherman kind of thing, those Wisconsin. I go, yeah, Aykroyd did that, 10. It's like, well, what about this? Say another character that it's like, yeah, that's Belushi. Yeah, you're copying him. It's like there's nothing original. You're not doing anything original. And it literally bummed him out. So I literally just popped the balloon, and it was so sad. I felt so horrible about it. Like, years later, I went to bed with a smile on my face, but that night, like,
evil brother.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, are we done with this conversation? And then, and so, and then I saw, he would do these characters, and yes, it was a little here, a little of all the stuff. He took, what he took really was an understanding of an audience, of what's funny, that interconnectivity of an ensemble that improv taught him that you don't have to be the loudest, funniest. You can just react to people and just do a funny face. And he learned all that. So he picked it from like so many different things, and he put it all into this package that was he just knew how to connect with people. Like people said right when he did his first play in college at Marquette, it's like you couldn't take your eyes off him. He would get on stage and like, what's this guy going to do? And he maybe had one line, but you just were always watching him because he was always waiting for that moment to explode. And you knew it was there. And sometimes sometimes he didn't do what you thought. And that made it that much more exciting. So it was all of that. And so when I see people doing just Chris, I'm like, all right, yeah. But then I look for those other qualities of like, what are you bringing to it? Because that's all what it's all about, And at first I was kind of like, it brought me back to like, that, asshole older brother, like, guy's trying to be like Chris. And right after he died, I was like, just kind of like, sorry, dude. And then I'm a little bit more accepting now. Like I grew into it with Chris. I'm like, all right, you respect the king. If you emulate him, if this is your guy, if Chris is your guy, then then just like, and I wouldn't say only Belushi was Chris's guy, because it was it was Harvey Korman. It was, all the Carol Burnett people. So it was all that stuff. But if Chris is your guy, okay, then build around it. And the ones that do, it's funny to see just a little, now it's funny to see just the little Chris that comes out, because now it's been 20 years and there's so much body, it's so much built into this, historical kind of one of the comedy greats. Chris is part of that group now. And when you see it just a little bit, it's like, there's Chris. And now it just makes you feel so good. It's great to see that. I love that.
I have a question about his scream, his very iconic yelling voice. It's kind of three questions. One, is that really how Chris like yells if he ever had to yell? Two, I, I think you said he got it from like your dad and your coach. And third, like, did he ever just like blow out his voice after every performance? Was he just like hoarse the next day?
Yeah, sometimes. Yeah. Well, yeah, it was totally my dad. The movement and stuff of the Matt Foley character, that was our coach. That was Joel Maturi. He was always like, like down in the crouch, like getting everyone really mad. And he was a Notre Dame football guy. So he was that total, he was great. So Chris had the movements and stuff from coach, but the voice was my dad. And because dad he'd walk into the house and you didn't know, you had like seconds before you had to determine if he was, just really excited about something or really mad. You didn't know because the voice was the same. A friend of ours used to tell the story when they were with my brother Kevin's friend, Jimmy Roach. They were sitting watching TV once in high school. And he said, all of a sudden your dad walks in the door and all we hear is, "Who wants to go to Gimbals?" Everyone like Jimmy like dives under a table because he thought somebody was going to die. And everyone's like, the rest of us are like, "I do," because we were going, Dad's taking us on a trip, we were going on a road trip. But it was just, dad was like, everything was just loud. Like, who wants to go, who wants to go up north this weekend? Yeah, he would just, yeah. And so we all have that ability. Chris, he always did that, but yeah.
That's amazing. Cause one of possible like top 10 funniest things I've ever seen in my life was whenever, like, I love pretty much any sketch that Chris is in, but in Tommy Boy, whenever he's like playing with the cars and he's like, I can't even do it. Just that I can't stop. And I was like, it's just like the most perfect. Oh my God.
Oh my God.
Chris never thought about being in a death metal hardcore band. Because that's a gift.
Yeah, that would have been, yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's like Ramstein, new singer. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, it was funny when that was all my dad.
That's amazing. So Tom, we're about to close out the show. Is there anything else you want to talk about?
Yeah, no, I was going to say, let's talk about the election. No, that was fun. It's funny. I talk about little things here and there. You know what? I'll leave you with one kind of, you talk about the Farley family. Mm-hmm. I'll leave you one revelation I came up with like recently, like in the last couple, like a month. I've always described my family and growing up as a circus, and it was a total circus. And that was enough. But recently it dawned on me, I was thinking about a circus. I don't know why, but all of a sudden it dawned on me, like, we absolutely were a circus. We had all the characters there under the big top. Chris was the elephant. And I don't mean that in a pun way. Chris was the main attraction. Chris was everyone. Well, that's what everyone came to see. There's the elephant. And just amazed at what the elephant could do. It's like, oh my God, he's balancing on a ball. He's up on his hind feet. Oh my God, he's just like Chris. And that was Chris. And my two brothers, Johnny and Kevin, who are comedy actors and in their own right, they were the clowns that would appear in the little tiny car and pop out and throw pies at each other. And they were always, they were great. Always kept everyone laughing. I was the guy. I was the ringmaster with the nice, red tux, jacket on and the top hat, and yelling out, all the attractions, thinking that it was all about me, thinking that I was the main guy here, and couldn't be farther from the truth. It took me years to figure that out, but I was like, okay, yeah, stop yelling. So that was me. my sister Barbara Ann, our poor only sister, she was the one that would come out every night, the nice sparkly sequin dress, wave to the crowd, big smile on her face, and she'd get sawed in half every night. And the next day she'd come out, so there's Barb, smiling, waving, sawed in half. She just never won. And my dad was the barker outside the tent, just whipping getting the crowds in, come step right up, see the bearded lady and come on in, and just whipping all the whole show into frenzy. And my mom, she was up on the trapeze, looking beautiful, and just looking down like, what is going on down there? I am not coming down. That is absolutely chaos. And I'm just going to sit up here and get the oohs and the ahs, and that's good. And that was the Farley Circus. That's exactly what it was.
Did your mom find you guys funny?
My mom was where a lot of our humor comes from.
Really?
Oh my God. My dad was, great Irish, but he was Midwestern. He had the right joke with the right audience, but Dad had the attraction. Everyone came to see Dad. Dad had that same attraction that Chris has. Like, what's he going to do? We gotta be over here by this guy because something's going to happen. Dad was, he would just draw you in and have a good joke. My mom from Boston, she was Boston Irish, and she had no fear. She literally was the risk taker. We'd be sitting at a dinner table out in a restaurant, and the waiter would come over. Within 5 minutes, she'd be like, well, this is this person. And everyone around the table, she introduced to the waiter and like, who's here, who's related to who's not here, why they're not here. That the waiter would get it all from my mom, who was just constantly fearless, just, with in a crowd, just everyone just loves her to this day. She's the real star, but she's just so funny.
That's amazing. Well, Chris, thank you so much for coming on. I'll ask you one more question. Can you, like I told you before, I recently started taking improv classes and getting back into it. Do you have any advice for improvisers?
I'll say it, and I'm going to rob this from a good friend of mine that went to high school with us, that does a lot of the stuff too. He has an improv troupe up in Minneapolis. And I love what he says. He says basically that innovation exists on the other side of fear. So once you get past that fear, and you need to, going back to that being uncomfortable, that's when the real innovation and excitement and idea generation, that's where it's all over there. It's on the other side of fear. So get past that as soon as you can, because that's where that's the draw. That's the excitement. That's when you get past fear, it's all good. It's just all fun stuff.
Amazing. All right, Tom, thank you so much for being on. I'm going to let you plug in everything. Where can we find your book, and can we donate or anything to the Chris Farley Foundation?
It's all good, man. You can go to Amazon, still get the book. It's still in print. It's got pictures for the people that don't read well, and but it's a great book. I'm very proud of it, and but yeah, it's just all you can get it cheap on Amazon. But just great to be here. Oh, a lot of fun. Appreciate you asking me. I love talking about Chris, and I love talking about the family, because there's some sad parts, but there's some good stuff, and there's stuff we can learn, and there's stuff that I think there's a little bit of Chris and everyone. That's a frightening thought.
I'm good with that. I love Chris.
Yeah. I love that people still do.
Sorry, I was just looking in the chat. My dad was actually in the chat. He said, "Hey, Tom from Tennessee."
Awesome. I got to get down there and see you guys.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Come down and visit. You got to come down to Georgia and see me and Scott Bowling.
I got to get more of those like wet peanuts you gave me the last time I was down there. What's up with those?
I have no idea what you're talking about. I'll have to ask Scott.
Peanuts? Like soaked peanut. They're like peanuts that are like soaked in water or something down in Georgia. I don't know.
I mean, I've had peanuts, but I don't know about the wet kind.
They're like black. They're like, well, ask Scott about them.
Okay, I will.
But that was fun. I'd love to get back there too. That was a beautiful part of the country. And I don't know, that gig he's got going in that basement it's
beautiful.
that, and what a great guy. All
Oh,
those
boiler
guys.
peanuts. Someone said boiler peanuts.
Yeah, that's it. Boiled peanuts. That's what they are. I'm like, why did you boil them? But they were good. I loved them. Yeah,
I guess that's the thing here.
it is indeed.
Absolutely. Well, Tom, I know I've said this 800 times already, but thank you. Thank you for, you know, giving up your time to talk to me. I hope you had a good time because I had a great time.
Well, it got us through Friday the 13th for a little bit. So,
Yes. If anyone's had a bad Friday the 13th, I hope this show has made it better for you.
yes.
All
Well,
right. Thank you so much, Tom. See you
thanks,
later.
man. Good to see you.
Bye. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah.